Assalamu alaikum guys, welcome back to my channel Adnan on Tech. So landing your first IT job is tough, especially when every job posting says experience required. But how do you get experience when no one hires you? I've been there. I went through 6 interviews before I landed my first IT job. And in this video, I want to share my journey along the way and exactly what I learned along the way, including interview mistakes that I made, how I fixed them, and the strategies that finally worked for me. If you're new here, I'm Adnan. I've been in IT for 7 years and now run my own IT business. But I still remember the struggle of trying to land my first IT job. The lessons I learned back then are exactly what I'm going to share with you today. So, my first ever IT interview. This interview was I actually got thrown into the deep end with this interview because in hindsight, it was the best thing that could have happened to me as my first interview because it catapulted my experience and my confidence to another level straight away. This interview was a group interview and there was 20 of us that applied for the same job. It was an interview that went across 2 days. It was a 4-stage interview. 3 of the stages were on day 1 and the 4th and final stage was on day 2. Stage number 1 was a group introduction. So all of us, 20 of us, one by one, get up, introduce yourself to the group, talk about what you've done, what you've studied in the past. This is not a conventional way to do an interview, but in hindsight, when I look back at it, it did actually help me a lot. But you might not come across this a lot nowadays, and it's probably not a very common way to do an interview, but that company decided to do it this way, which was helpful for me in hindsight. So going back to stage number 1, and getting up in front of the group, introducing yourself, and talking a bit about yourself, what you've done in the past. Stage number 2 was a group task. So we were put in groups of 4 and 5s, and we were told to do a small task, which was like a team working task. It wasn't a technical task, it was just a task like solving a puzzle or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like a team working task where they were monitoring how we work in a team and how we take each other's lead and how we communicate with each other. So they had a couple of guys walking around looking at each group. That was stage number 2. Stage number 3 of the interview was the technical test part. The technical test wasn't hard, it was a paper test. We went through, the questions that came up was things like what's DHCP, what is a blue screen, what is RAM, how to add a user on Active Directory, and what is a group called in Active Directory, things like that. So all of the stuff that you would learn in A+ and Network Plus was way more than sufficient for these kind of interview questions. And remember, as I said to you in past videos, a first line help desk support job will never, they're not looking for someone too technical or the most technical person. They are more looking for someone that fits the team. So going back to the interview, that was the 3rd stage of the interview. So what happened was afterwards they let us go after the 3rd stage. They asked us all to sign out, and they said if you progress to the next stage, we'll contact you within the day or hour later and let you know if you progress, which you can come back tomorrow. I got an email an hour later informing me I had progressed to the 2nd stage. So I was invited to come back the next day. So the next day was stage number 4. This stage was a one-on-one interview with the head of IT in the company. This interview, when I did get my email, I started preparing more. I thought it might be more technical questions, so I started brushing up on my knowledge even more, getting prepared and excited about the interview the next day. I was fully prepared. I had to the T any technical knowledge that you could require in a first line support role. I watched a lot of videos about interview questions that can come up in first line or help desk role in an entry level IT job. I studied all these things. I brushed up on my A+ and Network Plus. Went to the interview confident. I had the interview one-on-one now. By the way, 3 of us got to the final stage. So I was one of 3 people out of the 20 that got to the 2nd and next day final stage. Once I did get into the interview, what I realized was, and what happened was, I wasn't asked any technical questions. The guy was asking me things like, what's your weakness? What's your strength? Tell me a time you worked well in a team. And tell me a time you dealt with a difficult customer. So things like this. So this kind of threw me off because I wasn't prepared. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't prepared for any of these questions. I was more focused on the technical side and my studies. So when I came across these questions, I was like, oh, okay, this is not what I prepared for. But I answered it the best I could while being unprepared. After we left the building, I went home. I got an email a couple of hours later, or maybe the next day, informing me, unfortunately, I didn't get my job. So I followed up. I asked the IT manager, could they please give me some feedback on my interview, and it would be appreciative and help me going forward. The feedback was they were happy with all my other stages of the interview, but the final stage of the competency questions, this is where I stumbled across, and this is where I failed on. This taught me a big lesson. So as this was my first ever IT interview, it helped me, first of all, speaking in front of people, working in a group, going through a four-stage interview, which boosted my confidence a lot, and at the same time gave me a lot of experience. But what the biggest thing was the feedback that I got was the competency questions, which are also called behavioral questions. This was so important, and going back now, I realized this is one of the main things they will ask you. This is one of the most important things, because they are looking for someone that fits in the team, not just someone that knows a bot, so to speak, that knows everything about IT. They're kind of looking for the team fit. So now I knew this. Going forward, I had to change my tactics. While I knew I had my technical side of things in the bag, I started preparing more and more for my competency questions and these behavior questions, like what's your weakness, what's your strength. So going into the second, third interview, after every interview, I was building confidence. I was building more and more in confidence. By the time I went to my after my sixth interview, I was amazing. I was fully confident. The more I went to interviews, the more I grew in confidence. One thing I did learn, another thing that taught me in the process of going through from the first interview to the sixth interview, was that I was getting calls from recruiters. In the beginning, when I was getting the calls from the recruiters, I was nervous and anxious. But the more I got calls, the more I realized I know more than the recruiter. Because what you have to know is recruiters, they are not technical people. They're reading from a script. So you know more, you have to get in your head and understand you know more than a recruiter. Meaning, if a recruiter calls you, they've got a script where the company, maybe their internal recruiter or external recruiter, they've got a script where the IT manager or the company that they're working for gives them, and they're just asking people these basic questions. Do you know what DHCP is? So the main thing you need to know and keep in your head, first of all, you're more technical than them, you know more than them. And so you just have to sound confident and know exactly what you're talking about, and they won't push back too much because you actually know more than them. The other thing is preparing. So I would say three things. Number one, preparation. Number two, keep in mind that you know more than any recruiter that will call you, because you are the IT person that they're calling and they are reading from a script. Number three, sounding confident. So on the phone, be confident, be ready, know what jobs you applied for, anticipate that they will call you the next day, or then that week you know you applied for this job, this role. So know you may get a call from a internal or external recruiter, and be ready to answer the questions. So have your technical questions in the bag, but at the same time, confidence and preparation. So my pre-prepared answers and my preparations for those are the questions of what's your weakness and strength. First, those two questions were, I decided I would kill two birds with one stone, meaning I would answer both in the same question. So even if they started with what's your strength, I would say my go-to answer for the strength was, my strength is my persistence, meaning I want to get the job done. I would persist until I do, and until I get the job done, and I don't give up. But at the same time, my persistence can be my weakness, meaning sometimes where I could escalate or ask another team member or someone senior for help, I would kind of work on something for a bit longer than maybe I should have, and waste a bit of time instead of I could have actually got to the answer or got some help. Or sometimes it can be a weakness, but I see it as a strength, which is the majority of my time in terms of my studies and my previous workplaces. It was a bigger positive than a negative. So this was my answer, hitting two birds with one stone, hitting both questions at the same time. So even before they asked me what's your weakness, I would answer weakness and strength with the first question. Sometimes they'll ask it together, which is good. Sometimes they'll ask one, what's your weakness? And I would say, but one thing I do know, being on the other side of the fence now, hiring people and being an employer, what I do know is anyone that says they don't have a weakness is lying. I'll be honest. Everyone has weaknesses. And then as an employer, you are looking for someone to tell you the truth. And so the weakness, obviously your weakness is not going to be, and my weakness is not being able to get up to go to work, or I'm late every day. That's going to look bad on you. And if that is your weakness, then obviously you have to work on that. That's a bigger problem we have to address, you have to address. But in general, you're not going to go to an employer and say my weakness is not being able to get to work, because obviously he's looking for someone to get to work and pay. The other, and with strengths, obviously be honest with your strengths as well, so you can relate it to your work. But at the same time, your strength and your weakness is not going to be your physical strength or your physical weakness. It's work related, so you have to relate it to your strengths in work, your strengths in, or your weaknesses in work. In terms of my other go-to answer for the question that came up in most of the interviews, which is tell me a time you worked well in a team. I prepared myself mentally, which I did actually go through this scenario and I rehearsed this, so I was ready. So the best failing to prepare is preparing to fail. That's a good saying. So meaning if you're not prepared and ready and you have to freestyle on the day, it can be a problem. So rehearsing your answers, getting your answers on lock, making sure you have the answer for these questions were good, and being ready to pivot if something else comes up as well is another important trait that you should have and work on. So my answer for the tell me a time you worked well in a team was I was working in a scenario where we were on the phones, and it's kind of like a call center kind of vibe where we were answering calls from clients. So what happened was one of my colleagues was having an issue next to me, and he was a junior colleague having an issue with a customer. The customer was irate, being very angry. I could hear it and I could see my colleague unable to deal with this and not knowing what to do. So I asked my colleague to put the phone on mute for a second, asked the customer to give them a second. I asked him, is it okay if I can take over the call and speak to the customer and show him how to handle this situation? So he kindly let me take over the call. I took over the call, put the headphones on, spoke to the customer, and the issue with the customer was he was angry and my colleague couldn't get the point across to him where he was waiting for his refund, and he wanted his refund instantly, which normally takes 5 working days or sometimes 10 working days if it's a bank refund. So I had to calm him down and explain to him that your refund has been issued. I sent him confirmation of the issued refund, a confirmation email, and that he'll be getting his refund within 5 to 10 working days. If he doesn't receive it, he can get back to us. And I also advised him, because he was using internet banking at the time, he didn't have a bank app, so I advised him download the bank app, so you his bank's app, and he could get instant notifications as soon as the money comes into his account. And if there's any issues, we can deal with it and escalate this, even get compensation if something happens. So I kind of soothed it. So one thing very important that shows, number one, I'm working well in a team, I'm helping one of my colleagues. Number two, showing your calmness with clients and customers, which, like I said, every industry, either services or selling products, you always have client or customer. You always have clients or customers. So this showed both sides of knowing how to calm a customer, because in IT in general, what you need to know is you're going to have clients, and the people that you're supporting, they may be, if you're working for an MSP, they may be people that are remote. If you're working for internal IT, the people that are in the same building as you. So one thing you need to know, and in their mind, everything's urgent. So someone's mouse might not be working, someone's emails might not be working, someone's Zoom may not be working, which they have a Zoom call in 10 minutes, the laptop might crash or something like that. Because a lot of these people, what you need to understand is a lot of people that work in companies, they're focused on whatever they work on. So if they're an accountant, they open up their computer and put their password and username in, log in and go to the specific application that they use for their work. So they're professionals and experienced in whatever they do, but in terms of the computer, they never investigate anything else in the computer. So some may not know where the start button is. So in general, any issues is normally urgent. We know as an IT person, we need to remain calm and know everything's not urgent, but if it's something that connectivity issue or something that they can't connect, especially a senior person or anything, it could be vital to the company's finances or whatever. So it could be something, so you need to be on your game. If you found this helpful, like, subscribe to Adnan on Tech. I'll be posting weekly videos on IT career advice, tutorials, business advice on my IT business and various other businesses I've founded. So let me know down in the comments your toughest interview question so far. I'll share my thoughts.